And one time, my crush brought me to an empty, creepy restaurant, and the strange waitress there gave me an eerie warning. But before I tell you what happened and what the waitress told me, please remember to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and hit that notification bell icon to show your support for me. I started college with no expectations. I thought I would skate by without incident, and 4 years later, graduate just like most kids do. I thought I'd trudge through my classes and party in peace. The last thing I expected was to run into my old crush. It was in my sophomore year that I ran into Becca. Our campus was so huge that our paths didn't even cross until well into my second year. I was rushing to a class I was late for, and we bumped into each other. "Ow!" she exclaimed in annoyance. I said sorry about 14 times as I helped her pick a bunch of notebooks up, brushing away the dirt that had clung to them. But when I looked up, I recognized her immediately. "Oh, wow," I said in recognition. My jaw remained ajar as I struggled to greet her like a normal person. Unfortunately, being normal and having adequate social skills was never my forte. So I just awkwardly knelt there, blankly gazing up at Becca's confused face as I continued to brush the dirt from her already clean notebooks. If she hadn't forcefully pulled her stuff from my hands, I would still be in that position a week later. Sorry," I said, embarrassed. I just couldn't believe you went to the same university. Rebecca Bunt, here." "Not really that unbelievable. I mean, my parents live barely 50 kilometers away," she said with a laugh. "Wait, do I know you?" That dashed my excitement a bit. She could have at least pretended to remember me. I mean, how could she forget Senior Formal 2016? I was about to introduce myself when I saw a look of recognition cross her face. "Oh gosh! Oh, of course!" she exclaimed. "Finally," I thought. "John, right? Or was it Josh?" "Yeah, Josh! Senior Formal 2016, I remember now," she added. "Yeah, Senior Formal 2016. Who could forget?" I said, slowly regretting the fact that she actually remembered. I mean, good for her, but I guess it was more of an embarrassing memory for me. "I'm so sorry," said Becca. "I didn't mean to be rude. I should have recognized you earlier. How have you been? It's been ages, hasn't it?" How could she just automatically switch from annoyed to bubbly and chummy like that? Why is she talking to me like we're old friends? I mean, I was thankful that she didn't bring up what happened that night. But was that worse? That the most important night of my life was just a footnote in her memories? But I took what I could get. The girl who ignored me for most of high school was now talking to me as if we were close. As far as I was concerned, that was a win. Yeah, it's been so long. I'm doing great. And you?" I said as nonchalantly as I could manage. "Want to get some coffee and chat or something?" she asked. Darn, I knew I was winning, but I didn't think I'd be winning that much that quickly. Yes, I answered, much louder and way more excited than I'd intended. I'm actually running late to Calc 2, but who cares about math, right? I said. Becca giggled at that. "Just what I wanted to hear," she said. I cared a lot about math, actually, but I wasn't about to turn down an invitation from the one girl I've always had a massive crush on. I'm sure Mr. Chan will excuse my absence just this once. He probably won't. Becca took me off campus. It was in this hole-in-the-wall cafe that seemed like it was too hole-in-the-wall that nobody else was there, except for a couple of really sad-looking people. One of them looked homeless. But the place actually surprised me. The coffee was nothing like I'd ever tasted. And the food? The food was heavenly. I guess you really shouldn't judge a book by its covers. Same way you should never judge a cafe by how it looks on the outside, I guess. Beyond the great food and the awesome coffee, what made that day for me was Becca, of course. She smiled the whole time and laughed at my lame jokes. She never made me feel embarrassed for what happened between us during high school. She didn't even bring it up, which I thought was a bit weird at first. But then, I figured she was probably trying to forget it too. And as far as I was concerned, that was the best course of action. See, I first met Becca on a rainy day in our first year of high school. I'd just moved to her town and knew nobody in the new school. On top of that, I was late to class that day because my dad slept in and we lived too far for me to bike the whole way. When we left the house, it was sunny. My dad ran 3 red lights and got caught by local police on the 3rd. When the traffic cops pulled us over, it was only a couple blocks away from school. And so, I decided to hop out of the car and hoof it before I became any later than I already was. Just as I turned my first corner, a sudden rain began to pour. And so I ran. But as I was about to cross the street, a car almost hit me. The driver rolled her windows down and angrily beated me for not looking where I was going. It was Becca. She looked me up and down and realized I was headed to the same school as her. Her road rage calmed instantly, and she insisted that I get in the car. "Get in!" she prodded. "You're gonna get soaked. I'll drive you to school." She wasn't even old enough to drive yet. I guess that was just how small towns worked. I didn't know. I'd always been a city boy. I didn't think to question her. Instead, we spent the short drive getting to know each other. I immediately had a crush on her. The way we met, how kind she was, and how instantly we clicked, it couldn't have been anything else but fate. We ended up being in the same class, and that only deepened my interest in her. The thing was, I quickly realized that Becca was at the very top of the high school food chain. She was a rich, popular, pretty girl. Every guy wanted to date her, and she was the teacher's pet to boot. Meanwhile, I was the weird, geeky transfer guy who nobody knew. That led to us never getting to talk, and if the chance ever arose that she would be looking my way, nothing ever came of it because her girlfriends would suddenly distract her from paying attention to the weird new kid. For Becca, life went on like she never rescued a guy from the rain. For me, all I could think of was her. I was obsessed. Until one day, on the night of our senior formal in 2016, I finally plucked out the courage to talk to her. I had spent almost 4 years just longing for her. I spent those years formulating in my head what I would say. I spent countless nights playing the scenario in my head, practicing my smile in front of a mirror. And when the moment came, I felt sick. Every step I took towards her made my stomach churn. And when I finally came face to face with her, Becca smiled and said, "Hi." I hadn't eaten that day knowing that it was probably my last chance to tell her how I felt. All I had was the punch they served at the dance. I began to open my mouth to say hi back, but instead, what came out was regurgitated pineapple berry punch. Almost 4 years of longing and the anxiety born out of not being able to talk to the girl I liked translated into vomit. And it all cascaded onto Rebecca Bunt's pretty baby blue dress. I was mortified. Rebecca was mortified. Everyone around us was mortified. Rebecca's gaggle of girlfriends immediately came to the rescue. They pulled her away from me and they ran to the nearest girls' room. One of them even pushed me on the shoulder and yelled, "What's wrong with you?" The rest of the night was a blur for me. I remember my dad picked me up, but yeah, that was the last time I ever heard from Becca. But now, I have a chance to make it up to her. Now she's actually talking to me. Now I can at least tell jokes around her without barfing all over the place. And I thanked fate for the chance at a do-over. Turned out, most of the kids from our high school ended up moving away for college. Only Rebecca stayed behind to go to our state's university. Makes sense, actually. If I had a choice, I would have left that place too. Literally nothing went on there. But my dad's business was based there, and he needed me to help out on weekends. Becca and I hung out every other day. She started working at my dad's business shortly after. And after work, we'd go out. Each time she'd bring me to more and more unusual places. One day she even showed me this old, dilapidated ruin in the middle of the woods. We brought a picnic basket and just spent the afternoon talking. I felt us getting closer. And so, I decided the next time we went out, I would ask her to be my girlfriend. The chance came sooner than I expected. She said she'd found a unique place for us to go. I drove us there. It was just outside of town, past the old train depot that everyone referred to as the graveyard, because it was where old trains went to die. The restaurant wasn't hard to find. It was the only building in the middle of a desert. It gave me creepy vibes. And when we got in, there was nobody there. I had to call out 3 times before anyone even came out. And when I saw the waitress, her eyes were wide with surprise. as if she never expected anyone to come in. She was very nervous as well. I noticed her hands were shaking as she took down our orders. The date went smoothly regardless. Becca smiled and laughed at my jokes, but then, when our waitress came with our dessert, she spilled Becca's milkshake on the table. That was the first time I saw Becca frown. "What are you doing?" she yelled at the fumbling waitress. "It's all over my dress!" I tried to calm Becca down. It's alright. It's alright. It's not her fault," I said. And to the waitress, I asked, "Could you just give us a napkin or something? I'll take care of it." When the waitress came back with a napkin, what I saw made my blood run cold. As I opened it up to wipe the mess, I saw written inside in huge letters, "Run." I have to confess, I was a coward. I did. I don't know why. Something just told me I should believe the waitress. And I hadn't heard from Becca in 3 days. I'm scared. I can't sleep. What should I do?